Much for joining us for the session today. My name is Ruben, and I'm part of the investment team at Pi Ventures. We are an early stage VC fund based out of Bangalore, and we invest in deep tech startups. One of the initiatives that we have been taking is to organize founder focus sessions, and these sessions dive into different aspects of building a startup. And today's session, we are going to focus on fundraising, which is a very important, but often a challenging part of a founder's journey. And for this session, we have with us Swapnil Jain, who's the CEO and co-founder of Observe.ai. Now, before I introduce him, just a couple of points for the audience. We're going to be breaking this session into two parts. The first one will be a brief talk by Swapnil, post which we will be opening it up for an AMA. So please feel free to put all the questions that you have on the chat and we will take it from there. The second thing is, please keep yourself on mute at all times. Now, brief background on Swapnil. So Swapnil is the co-founder and CEO of Observe.ai. He launched the company along with his co-founders in 2017 with the vision to transform contact centers using AI. He's led the company's adoption by hundreds of customers and partners and raised more than $200 million along the way from marquee investors like SoftBank, Menlo Ventures, Nexus, among others. An engineer by trade, Swapnil brings a wealth of experience and expertise from working on product-focused teams at Twitter and Google, as well as a deep understanding of AI technologies, user experience, and contact center demands. He's an alum of IIT Delhi. Swapnil, thanks so much for joining us today. I have to mention that Swapnil is based out of California at 7 a.m. his time. So thanks again, and over to you.
No, thank you. Yeah, well, it's 7 a.m. for me, so I had to have coffee before. But no, nice to meet you all. Thanks so much. Yeah, definitely want to share my journey with all of you. Right, I can kind of relate to where you all are right now in your journey. When we started Observe, we were in similar phases as a lot of you, right? At that point of time, in 2017, there was a lot of buzz around AI, but the true AI applications were still limited, right? There was innovation that has happened in speech and natural language, but it has not really taken off in the form of like enterprise applications or even consumer applications. We were starting to see things like Alexa and Google Home on the consumer side, but true startup-led innovation was still limited, right? So I can kind of relate to a lot of what you all are also going through right now. Yeah, so a little bit about me, my background, as Rupan said. Thank you, Rupan, for the context and the background. I'm an engineer by background, did my bachelor's in computer science from IIT Delhi, moved to San Francisco after that. Immediately after that, came here, worked at Twitter for about 3 years as a full stack tech lead. And I think that gave me a lot of exposure to data and the business to consumer interaction, right? Because a lot of businesses interact with consumers on Twitter. So that was kind of, I would say, my entry point into just understanding the business to consumer world, the customer support, the contact center world. Post that, I moved back to India for 2 years and to research different ideas in different industries, and also spent time dating a lot of co-founders. So this is 2015 to 2017. I was spending a lot of cycles in different industries. So I spent cycles in SaaS, financial services, insurance, real estate, e-commerce, you name it, right? I literally spend cycles on just learning and researching about different ideas. And then also spend a lot of time with, dating different co-founders or which co-founder would be like the right fit for what I'm looking for. And then started this company in 2017. And our journey since then have been, pretty good. We're now a 5-year-old company. We started precisely in August of 2017. As Rupan said, we're an enterprise SaaS company. We sell in mid-market enterprise here in North America, work with more than 200 plus customers, primarily in financial services, insurance, healthcare industries. We have 230-ish employees split between India and US. India is about 150-ish people, and then US is between 80 to 100 people here. Our India team is entirely engineering, product managers, machine learning. Our US team is entirely go-to-market, right? And in this journey, we have raised, We just closed the Series C in February, which was led by SoftBank. So overall, we have raised about $225 million from investors like SoftBank, Menlo, Y Combinator, Nexus, and others. Yeah, so I think, our journey, when we started, um, there was, while people understood AI, I would say there was still unclear about the real applications and true applications of AI that we're going to see in the world. So when we would talk to people, people would be really excited to talk to us. I'm talking about investors, right? Like these investors, this is March of, sorry, this is um, July of 2017. People would be excited, like, oh, there's an AI company and they have .ai in the name and such great thing, right? Um, but most people didn't truly understand, right? Because there was no parallel to draw. They couldn't say, oh yeah, we have seen a lot of AI companies, we know how it works, right? So a lot of people were just coming in with a lot of excitement in the pitch when we were talking to them. But what I observed was they were not really getting, the deep tech part of it, which is like, okay, I'm going to do speech recognition and I'm going to extract sentiment from voice and I'm going to do like natural language understanding on all of these conversations. So I think, so we tried that approach for quite a bit. And I think what I learned, one of my biggest learnings by during that journey was, um, we as engineers, and I'm an engineer by background, right? And I'm sure some of you are too, right? We are super excited about technology, right? We all take a lot of pride in writing great code, building greatest technology, solving some of the hardest problems. But most people who consume the technology, um, and I shouldn't say this word, but couldn't care less about your technology, right? You might write your code in Python, you might use PyTorch, you might use Google, TensorFlow, or AWS. Like they don't really care. So our big learning from that was translate what you are doing, translate what your technology does to user and customer problems. Go back to the core of what a startup and entrepreneurship means, which is solving problems out there, right? Technology ends up being a how of what you're doing, but not the what and why. And what we realized as when we were talking to investors during the fundraise, they were more interested in what problems are we solving and why are we solving those problems. And then, of course, there's the how part of it, which becomes a differentiation, which becomes a competitive advantage, right? But I couldn't go out there and say, hey, I'm an ASR company. I do speech to text, fund me. And they're like, okay, so what problem are you solving? And whose problem is it? And who is the buyer? Who is the user? And how big is the market? Like, how do I say what's the market of such a core technology, right? It's everywhere, right? So we had to really translate this technology innovation, doing a lot of the speech work and the natural language work into the business problems we are solving, right? So the problems that we took was contact centers and how we can, there's tremendous amount of data in contact centers. How can we use the technology that we have built to analyze the data, extract meaningful insights for the contact center so they can improve their workflows and operations and processes in the contact center, right? So that was the one big learning that we had pretty early in our journey, that while we're a deep tech company, while we're an AI company, AI is the how of what we do, right? And what people care about the most is what and why, right? So, and then as engineers, right, like my tendency was getting very excited with the how of things, right? Like, oh, we're gonna do this amazing work, and our ASR is this much accurate, and we're deployed on this, and our latency is this, and the investor and even customers were like, yeah, but what do I do with this all this cool things that you're doing, right? You don't want to be R&D, you don't want to be cool, you want to solve business problems, right? So that was like the big takeaway, and I think I wanted to share with all of you, right? Like as you think about your companies, don't so there's innovation is great, but you all are not working in labs, right? You all are not working in R&D labs. You all are building businesses. You all are entrepreneurs solving business problems, right? And at the end of the day, your job is to solve customer problems and make money for your shareholders, right? So you have to kind of translate the great innovation that you have done, take it out into a product, into a user problem, into a buyer problem. Think about it from a business perspective. You have to translate the great technology that you've built. Otherwise, what ends up happening is like your great technology is great, but it only is a technology, right? You will never see the light of the market and the kind of adoption that you all wanted it to have. So our journey, kind of started, I would say, and we were very early in the market at that point of time. We technically didn't even have competition. So our round was not that easy, right? Like first round, we had to speak to a lot of investors. We got a lot of no's, and in every no, we were just learning. Hey, how do we adopt? How do we learn? How do we change, right? Um, so in 2017, August of 2017, when we were starting, we were able to get our first seed round. So we raised $1 million as part of a seed round. Started working on the product, right while there was technology. And the other thing that we did at that point of time was, from an innovation perspective, there was so much we could do. Literally, like we could spend years trying to build this amazing, speech and natural language. But we also wanted to make sure that, hey, it's a business at the end of the day. It's not a science lab project where I'm spending years building this great technology, right? So we knew that we had to generate revenue. We knew we had to get customer validation. We knew we had to sell. So what we consciously did was, we were okay saying that for some parts of the technology, we're going to just use open source, or we're going to use a third party, even though we knew that it's not the most accurate or the best technology ever. And the reason for that was, we wanted to validate the user problem and business problem faster. If we had spent years building ASR, like it would take 5 years to build a world-class ASR and then do a go-to-market and see if this even works. So then have I wasted 5 years doing this research? So what we wanted to do was, okay, we are okay. Look at the bigger user problem and the buyer problem. And then if it's okay to plug in third-party applications for now, so that we can validate the user problem and the buyer problem to give us the confidence that what we are working makes sense. We're building something that people care about. And then over time, you slowly rip and replace all those third-party solutions or open source solutions with your own deep tech, right? But we also didn't take the approach of, okay, I'm going to take first few years to just build this technology and do a go-to-market. We were always clear that, hey, we are a business and we have to get customers, we have to get revenue, we have to get contracts pretty early on. Then we went to Y Combinator. Y Combinator was also not easy for us. We applied once, we got rejected. So this is March 2017. We applied, we got rejected. They were like, and I think funny enough, right? Like when I go back and look at that application, it really shows like how we didn't really know much, right? When we look at the application, we realize like how stupid we were, right? About the market, about the user problems, about the buyer problems, about the TAM and everything, right? And how our thinking has evolved in the last 5 years, right? So we applied to YC in March, didn't get in. Then we spent about 6 months, learning more about the market, the space, the problems, and then we applied again in December, actually November again, and then we got in. So came to US as part of YC. This is January of 2018. We were all part of YC. Made a lot of good progress. Again, if you're at YC, there's one thing that they drill you, right? Is just focus on one thing. So they would say you only have like one job, and your job is build something people want, right? Like that is the crux of every single thing. Please do not end up building that people don't want. At the same time, please don't be in a situation where you're not building anything and you're just doing the talking, right? So it was a good mix of like and then if you think about the product market fit, right? The crux of product market fit is not how great your technology is, not how great your innovation is. Like, here's the user problem, my product solves the user problem. Boom, right? That's the crux of it, right? So went to YC. I think they drilled this into us, and they would say like just do two things when you are at YC. The first thing is talk to users, so you know what they want, and go and write code, so you can solve those problems, right? Like there's nothing else you got to do in life. Forget about funding, forget about anything else. Like users, writing code for users, that sort of thing, right? So that was our YC journey. Learned a lot, got a lot of exposure to US and US enterprise customers and US market. Right after YC, we were able to raise a big seed round. So Nexus Venture Partners came in and led a big seed round. And I think like if I were to break down why that round happened, I think a big part of that round was because of we took what we had and we were able to show it to tremendous amount of customers and get a lot of validation that this is what they need. They will pay for this need, right? We even had some initial contracts with some of those customers. So it was pretty clear that, hey, it's not just a great technology, there's a mass adoption in a certain set of customer base who are going to buy this technology, right? So that made our series, the bigger seed round with Nexus easy. Then from there, we started building the core team, started building the product, iterations, talk to customers, iteration, started doing some go-to-market, founder-led go-to-market, right? So I still remember we would reach out to customers here in the US. We would figure out, okay, who is the potentially the right customer for us. We would reach out to them here in the US. I remember I would wake up at like 2 a.m. So these customers would be in PST and EST, right? So, and I was in India. So I remember I would wake up at like 2 a.m. I would reach out to these people and they would be like VPs at different companies, right? And when I tell them I want to talk to them to get feedback, I'm not going to tell them that I'm in India and I can only chat in morning or evening, right? Like, no, I mean, just give me time. I'll meet you at whatever time possible, right? So these people would give me time at 2 a.m. India time. And so I would wake up in middle of the night. I would put on a shirt or something to make it look like, hey, I'm in their time zone. And then also like put a curtain so they can't see it's dark or something, and then talk to these customers and users, right? So a lot of customer validation during that time from after a seed round. Built a team, and that's when we started doing a lot of our in-house AI work as well. We got a chief scientist about 4 years ago now. He came in and then he started building a lot of the core technology, started building the core team. So we had a lot of speech scientists, machine learning engineers, started getting some early customers, got some early revenue, very early, right? So our revenue by end of 2018 was maybe like 100K or something, right? 100K ARR. So, and then 2019 was when we were ready to go to market. We were like, we have a product, we know this works, we know it has provided value. So then we doubled down, and it was still, I would say, 2019 was still founder led, right? So my co-founder Sharath, who was a CRO, and then me, he would be the one talking to all of the customers. Like, we didn't have sales. We had one or two salespeople, but they were more generating pipeline for us, right? So we would be the people going out. So 2019 turned out to be like a really solid year for us. We did like amazing work in terms of our revenue growth. Our revenue literally grew, I should say, like 20 times, where like we were doubling quarter over quarter, or actually more, right? We were selling into enterprise. So all of that worked out really well for us. Then that was the year when we started building our sales teams, our marketing teams, our more leadership teams. Finished 2019 on a high, and right when we were in, I would say, the 1 to 2 million range, ARR range, we raised a Series A, and that's the right time to raise a Series A, right? And I'll talk about the ranges for when you want to do a pre-seed, seed, or something. And I think even a Series A was not easy. I'll be honest, right? It took some time for us. We spoke to a lot of investors, and it took some time for us to explain the technology, the market, and the applications of this technology, right? This is a common thing, and I keep telling founders, right? When you read press releases, right, or when you read external stories, you basically get the good part of stories, right? You're like, oh, this company raised this much round. Or if you go back to read like Observe journey, you'll be like, wow, it's been so nice, and they've been able to raise. But I keep telling founders, right, that's a lot of PR, that's a lot of marketing, right? And as true to founders, right, I would never tell you that the journey is going to be that easy, right? So I still remember, like, for our Series A, we had a lot of rejections. We spoke to a lot of investors, and some were not getting the application of technology. Some were not believing that our Deeptech is actually innovative. Some were not believing that the TAM exists. So we had to keep iterating, keep learning, right? But again, through hard work and talking to a lot of investors, we were able to do a good Series A. And then pandemic year 2020 was a good year for us. Even though it was a pandemic year, we scaled really fast, doubled our revenue, maintained good churn, and that was the year when we started becoming, I would say, more growth ready, right? So hired executives, got a Series B from Menlo, a $54 million Series B. 2021 was actually a phenomenal year for us. We grew 3x in revenue, phenomenal, gross retention 90+%, 135+% net retention. So overall turned out to be a great year. And then, as we were getting ready for growth, SoftBank came in and led a Series C. And I think now we're at a good stage where this is a lot of capital for us to continue scaling the business. I spoke a lot. I gave you guys on what worked, what didn't work, right? But I want to make sure I cater to what you guys are interested in and where you are in your journey. So Rupan, if you're okay, maybe should we transition to Q&A and then deep dive into specific areas, or do you have anything specific that you want me to cover before that?
Absolutely. I think we can do that. So while we get the questions coming in, maybe a couple of questions from my side. Um, so one would be, what is the right amount to raise?
Yeah.
And second would be, is there anything like raising too much money?
Great question. I think when is the right time? So if you are just a founder who's starting a company, right? And in deep tech companies, especially when you're doing any deep work in artificial intelligence or robotics or any of those areas, there is a lot of upfront investment, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, it does require for you to do, put together, maybe buy data sets or do some work to collect data sets, build the models initially. Models are not deterministic, so sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. It's not just a simple web application where you just go and like write code and it works, right? So it does require a lot of upfront investment. So I think for pre-seed founders, when you are just starting, I would encourage that get a validation of your problem statement. And if you're confident about your problem statement, and I'll make a problem statement up, right? Let's say you feel like I'm building a robot that is going to make breakfast for humans, right? So that's your problem statement. So the problem statement, let's do a why of that, right? Okay, so who is this problem for? Well, I think this problem applies to bachelors who don't want to make their own breakfast and also can't afford a maid or don't want a maid, right? So this is how you do ICP work. You're trying to qualify for this who will be applicable, and then you go and talk to hundreds of these bachelors or even married people for that matter, but like your user personas, right? And you talk you once you validate that, okay, you know what, I think there's an opportunity here, but building such a robot is a long time, right? And a lot of upfront investment. So I think that's a good time for you to think about your pre-seed round and your first round. And for your first round, depending on how much upfront investment exists in your area, I would say like a good round could range from 300K to a $1.5 million round. I think that those are like a very solid range for you to raise around. And I think I would highly encourage, right, entrepreneurs to think of, and I'm using the word entrepreneurs again and again because you all are entrepreneurs. You all are not scientists in labs, right? So you all are building commercial technology. You all are building a business at the end of the day, right? So think of fundraising and think of fundraising process as part of your validation and as a friend that will help you build your technology to life, to your market, right? So and then also in this process, you do learn a lot, right? When you talk to 10 investors, you get different perspectives from people who are doing different things in different areas. And that really helps you because, you might be building a robot for making breakfast, but when you talk to an investor, and this investor might have invested in a robotics company that is doing robots for delivery, right? And there's a lot you can learn from that conversation in just a 30-minute or a 1 hour conversation. The kind of conversation a VC asks you who understand your industry, you kind of already know what you're missing or what is not working for you. So I would absolutely encourage everyone to think of this as a friend for you, and then raise that round. Talking about more money or less money, right? I do think that is the case, right? If you raise too much money, you kind of start hiding your product market fit problems with money, right? So let's say you're building a robot. Again, I'll go back to the same example: robot for making breakfast. And let's say you raise like $10 million, right? Now, what you might end up doing is like, well, I have money, right? So you might start thinking, okay, so, and then because I have money and this investor has given me so much money, so there's a pressure to do a go-to-market faster and generate revenue faster. So maybe I'll go to China and then buy like a robot that already exists, which might not be the most innovative, but somehow make it work and somehow just start selling right away. And you're getting revenue. And so you feel like, oh, wait, so now the business is real. But guess what? You actually never truly solved the problem or truly innovated. And now by spending a lot in marketing and sales, you're hiding your product market fit problems. So yes, I think you don't want to raise too much money because money will start challenging and hiding your product market fit problems. In the early days, you really want to focus on product market fit. So yeah, I think don't raise too much money.
Thanks for that, Swapnil.
I think there are a couple of questions on chat. Maybe we could pick up one of those. So Rahul asks, how do you think current market conditions impact the pre-seed seed round for deep tech companies?
Yeah, so I would say a couple of things there. One, I personally do not expect that there'll be a big impact for pre-seed and seed companies. Like what is happening in public market, you will see a lot of impact on growth rounds. So someone doing a Series C, Series D, Series E, like tremendous amount of impact. But public companies, obviously you're seeing an impact. Late stage round, you will see an impact. Series B, Series A, you might see some impact, but I personally believe like you're not going to see a lot of impact in the seed and pre-seed rounds. Additionally, no matter what the market conditions are, great ideas, great founders, and great technologies will always raise money because there's money in the market. There will always be money in the market, right? It's just that money is not that cheap. So there will be better ideas that will be funded, and if your idea is not good, it won't be funded, right? So in fact, I kind of think like this is a better time because again, if there was a lot of cheap money in the market, right, even though your idea is not good, you might get funded, and which will again hide the problem. You might think that because you were able to raise the money, your idea is good, but guess what? It's not. The reason you got money is because money is cheap, right? So I think I don't expect a lot of impact on pre-seed and seed markets, and great companies, great founders, great technology will continue raising money because there's a lot of money in the market actually. So yeah, that's sort of like my take on the pre-seed and seed rounds.
Awesome. Dhruv asks, and I'll kind of just summarize. What's your take on a VC valuing your revenue versus valuing the problem, right? In terms of giving you that capital, and is it bad to bootstrap for a while and then raise VC money?
Yeah, so raising money, most of your pre-seed and seed rounds are valued on your team, your problem area, and your TAM, right? So let's say, you're great founders, you're a second-time founder, and you know your industry really well, and you're working on a large problem, like amazing, like world-class, right? And then that will be valued higher than maybe say a second-time founder, same exact parameters, except for working in a small market, right? So your pre-seed and seed rounds are based on the team, the idea, the market. Series A, Series B, Series C is based on your revenue, right? So it's not this versus that. There's a very clear denomination that as you get more and more late stage, you're driven by metrics, you're driven by financial metrics. In the early stage, it's the founder, it's the team, it's the idea, it's the market, essentially.
Awesome. Pranay asks, a big upfront investment is required in case of most deep tech startups for a market-ready product. Now, investors require letters of intent from customers, while customers ask for a market-ready product, right? So how do you get out of this circle?
Yeah, so I think I always like to break the circle by focusing on customers, right? Because that's also the truest form of validation, right? I think LOI is a form of that validation, but in reality, what investors are looking for is this problem worth solving? And how do you know is this problem worth solving? Is the robot who will make breakfast worth even solving? How do I figure that out? And a proxy for that is I'm going to ask you, well, in this case, the example that someone gave is the LOI from these customers, right? We're like, okay, give me a letter of intent that you are really excited. And there are different ways to solve that problem. There are different ways to get that validation. One is obviously LOI. Well, the best form is contracts, right? You are able to go to an enterprise customer and sign this large contract, which is like, I'm going to build this product for you and then get it to you over time. The second is you get this like LOI, right? Or maybe you get a trial. Let's say like, oh, I'm signing you for a 3-month free trial. And then the third is like LOI. Fourth is, more verbal or written proof that this works, right? So the way we solve this problem is by finding design partners, right? So it takes effort. It's not easy. But when you're talking to customers, right, you're open to them. and you're finding champions who will bet on you, right? Who will bet on Swapnil that I have a problem. So let's use example of robots, right? Robots for breakfast. You're talking to hundreds of such people who could have this need. 50 of them said, I don't have this need, go, I don't want this product. Other 50, out of the other 50, 30 are like, yeah, I like this, call me when you have this, I can see the demo. There's remaining 20. Remaining 20, like 10 of them are like, yeah, I like this, but I can't do an LOI. And then for the remaining 10, right, you're able to tell them like, hey, this problem is really big for you. You're not getting breakfast, because of which you have headache in the day, and you're not able to, be fully productive. I'm going to solve this problem, right? I'm looking for design partners who I can work off with and give me a lot of feedback. So it's a trade-off that you do. You are trying to convince them by giving them a product that doesn't exist, by telling them, hey, be my design partner, come in this journey. And in some cases, you kind of bring them in by maybe massaging their ego. So you say, hey, VP of operations at this company, I'm going to make you an advisor and you become my design partner. You have a lot of wealth of information in this industry. You kind of like play this game and entice them into being a journey. Sometimes you just make them advisor and you're like, hey, I'm starting a company. I'm going to make you an advisor, right? And a lot of times these small things are really big for these people because you're not coming and selling them. You're trying to become a partner to them, right? Because you don't have a product. You're going to take years to build a product. You need these people who will support you. So go with the mindset that you're not selling them. Go with the mindset that you're trying to find a partner. And this is a very common concept called design customers and design partners. So go and find your 3 to 5 design partners, right? And it's a numbers game, remember. You will have to talk to 100 customers to find those 5. So be patient, right? Not everyone wants to be a design partner. Not everyone has time to work with such an early stage startup to spend their cycles. But you have to talk to more. You have to massage their ego. You sometimes have to bring them as an advisor, and then go with a partner mindset. Don't go with a sales mindset.
Awesome. So there's another question from Rahul, right? And we may have gone over this previously, touched upon it, but what are some of the most important slides that a seed investor looks for in the deck?
Yeah, I'll actually give you guys a framework here, right? Which when people think about funding, I've always found that people think about funding as how do I raise money, right? But I keep telling people that it's not about how do you raise money. It's about how do you build a great business, and then money will naturally happen. You're not just putting a nice deck together. You have a good business, and the deck just follows. Right? It's not that all of a sudden like my business is what my business is, and now I can create this amazing deck and raise money. Right? These are not two disconnected things, right? Deck is just a representation of your business. So always and always, like your seed, pre-seed, whatever rounds, right? Focus on building a great team, a large TAM, great product, innovative technology, and then things will happen. So I'll always keep that in mind. But specifically going to these questions, what are the 3 most important slides for a seed team, like 100%? I always started our seed pitches with team, right? Because the investors betting on this team, that they understand the market, they understand the problem. Second, I would say market/problem. What problem are you solving, and for whom? And then third is, in this case, deep tech, because we're talking about technology, like technology and how is the technology different, right? If you come back and say like, hey, I'm doing NLP, I'm like, great, 500 more companies are doing NLP. But like, what's your unique insight into this NLP? I don't think there's an expectation that you have a product ready and then you've figured it out, but you have a direction and you have an insight that here is a large market. I've got great co-founders and I have this insight and I'm going to build towards this insight and build a great company or build a great product. Those 3, if I have to shortlist to 3, those 3 would be the ones.
Got it. And slightly different sort of a question from fundraising, but Himanshu asks, how did you go about customization cases, especially in the case of big enterprise clients?
Yeah, so we were very clear about this. We never did any customization ever. Right? We always focused on configuration. So in machine learning and artificial intelligence, you build a model and you expect that model works for all your customers, and it's not going to work, unfortunately, because the data set that you trained on versus the data set that they have might vary, and then your accuracies and your precision recall might not be the same on their data sets, right? This happens. But we were clear that we never wanted to be a very customization company and services company because it's a slippery slope. Because you then get into this challenge of you're building custom model for each customer, you're spending so many cycles with each customer, you're kind of becoming like a services company. And we were very clear that we will build base models and we'll provide our customers ways to configure that versus trying to build custom models for that, right? So that's been our approach. But that being said, in the early days, I would do whatever it takes to get the customer, because when you have one customer, it's not customization, it's your product. There's nothing else for you to do, right? So in the early days, if the customer says like, even in our case, right, our first few customers are e-commerce customer. So we just built a model just for the e-commerce industry. So we did customization, but we did customization for the industry. So when you go to a customer and your customer is, let's say, a healthcare customer, and say like, hey, you know what, I need you to build me a custom model that does like image recognition over these lab reports, right? You're not just building for that customer, you're using that customer as a way to bootstrap your model for healthcare industry. And now you've now built a healthcare specific model. You have not built a customer specific model. So we have always stayed away from customers. We have always focused on some mechanism that applies to a wide variety of customers. So it could be industry based, it could be segment based. All of that has been our approach to this.
Got it. Maybe you could also perhaps shed some light on what were some of the key challenges you faced while raising your, let's say, pre-seed or seed or your very early stage rounds, right? And what could be a potential, what was a challenge then, what could be some potential challenges now that founders should look out for, both from a software and a hardware perspective?
Yeah, if you, in our journey, right, I think, as I said before, like, I'm a technical person. I'm a computer science engineer myself, right? So my bent is also very technical and very focused on, how and great technology and all of that, right? So that's how we sort of started in the beginning. And we learned really fast that we have to focus on problems, right? Technology is just a means to solving a problem, right? So we had to change our perspective to talking more about problems and what problems we are solving and for whom these problems exist and why do we believe that these problems even matter, right? Because most companies die not because they don't have technology, they die because they were just solving a problem that didn't even matter, right? No one cared about those problems, right? So that was our biggest learning, I would say, in the early days, where, hey, technology is good, but a lot more user validation, customer validation, problem validation is what really, really mattered. So we had to really, my co-founders and I, we had to re-anchor our mindset to move away from, saying that we are an AI company to, okay, we are a contact center problem solving company, right? Versus saying like, oh, I'm a robotics company or I'm a speech company, right? Like that's just technology. Like, so are you expecting that other people start saying I'm an AWS company, like someone who's building on AWS saying like I'm an AWS company, or someone who's a storage start saying I'm a storage company? No, right? These are just a means to an end. So that's, I would say, was our biggest learning, right?
Got it. And how do you decide what geography is better for raising? So Pooja asked this question: what geography? How do you decide which geography is better for raising patient capital for potential moonshot problems such as making creating a robot that makes breakfast?
Yeah, I think so. If let's continue this problem, right? So a robot for making breakfast. Let's say you're trying to make this, and you figured out that you spoke to 1,000 consumers in India, in different segments in India, and you found that none of them needs this, right? Now, if you go to a VC who invest in India companies and you sell them that, hey, I validated this in India and no one needs this, but this is a market in US, invest in me. They're not going to invest. They don't invest in US companies, right? So depending on where your buyers and users are going to be, that will naturally dictate a lot of that, right? So let's say we're building this bot for the Chinese market, only Chinese market. Why would an Indian investor invest, or why would a US investor invest, right? So there's a natural buyer user connection to where your VCs are. But let's say you are building a global business, right? Let's say the breakfast for robotic breakfast, let's say, is like a global phenomenon, and you're like, boom, this is amazing. And, people in San Francisco, people in Bangalore, and people everywhere in India wants this, right? Then any VC you can raise from is great, right? So Pi Ventures is phenomenal. You talk to them, and they feel this need exists, and they feel the market is great, and your team is great. Like that's a great VC. At seed and pre-seed, I would worry less about the geo of the VC. I would worry less about the brand of the VC. I would not worry about any of that. These things do not matter. What really matters is the partner able to help you in building your business. Like I would really optimize for that. And the geo restrictions naturally come out of depending on the market. But if you're global, then don't optimize for that. That's another thing you want to optimize for.
Got it. And how do you really choose investors at different stages of fundraising, right? Like, how do you know what angels you'd like to bring on at pre-seed versus which VCs to work with at a growth stage, or even after your seed stage?
Yeah, you basically, as a CEO, as a co-founder, what you're trying to do is, I use the same rule for VCs as much as the executive team, right? So you as a founder are good at something, right? So let's say I'm a technical co-founder, I'm really good at writing code, right? But that's not enough for building a business. Then you got to be really, really self-aware what it takes to build a great company. Remember, you guys are not building great technology. You're building a great business. You're building a great company, right? You're entrepreneurs at the end of the day, right? So when you start thinking at that level, when you start thinking about, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm building a great business, I'm building a great company, you gotta be self-aware about what you're good at and what you're not good at. It's really, really important to understand, right? So for example, in our case, in the early days, I knew that I can't do sales. My co-founder Akash, other co-founder Akash, he couldn't do sales. So we knew this, that we needed a third co-founder who would do sales. I would be really bad at doing sales, and you don't want me to be doing sales. That's bad for the company, right? So keep your ego aside, get a third co-founder who would do sales, right? Similarly, now as a team, we can write code, we can do sales, but none of us has done US go-to-market. Okay, so we need an investor who has seen companies, who has done US go-to-market, who can come on the cap table and really help us with that direction. So you look at your team, you assess what you're good at, what you're not good at, find investors who will fill that gap for you, who will really help you accelerate in that direction. So maybe you're a business person, maybe you did an MBA and you are like, I can do go-to-market, but I can't write code. Well, you get a co-founder who is good at that. Then you are like, okay, but I don't have any experience in company building. Well, you go and find investors who have been on boards where the companies have gone from seed to Series C or Series D, right? So this is how you complement yourself. This is how you find the right investor fit. And then obviously there are softer things like the cultural alignment, your connection with the investors, the investor alignment to your vision. All of that is obviously there, right? Like that happens. That needs to happen with every investor. And it changes, right? Like in seed stage, you might think like, okay, I need someone who is good at product. In Series A, someone who is good at go-to-market. Series B, okay, I need a growth investor. Series D, I need a lot of money investor, right? So you your needs change, right? And you're doing this need assessment by looking internally and saying, what do I need to become that $100 billion, $50 billion company, right? And you work backwards from there.
Great. And do you think that your perspective of your problem statement has changed before and after your fundraisers?
Not fundraise. Like, I mean, yes and no, but like, so I wouldn't say fundraise. I would say speaking to investors, right? Fundraise is like a single event where you are able to raise money, but fundraise, you lead up to fundraise by talking to investors. You're doing different dialogues, right? Yes, I do learn a lot, right? When you're talking to an investor who, for example, talking about the breakfast maker, right? So robotic breakfast maker, if there's an investor you're talking to who has done a lot of robotics investment, like go with a mindset that you're going to learn a lot. That investor has seen other robotics companies who have succeeded and failed, right? There's a lot you can learn from. Be open-minded, ask questions, be curious. Okay, so how did that company do? Make sure you're prepared. Make sure you go to their website and look at all the robotics companies and see how they're doing, how they're not doing. and what are the questions you want to ask, right? Honestly, like in the fundraise process, you are the investor is evaluating you as much as you are evaluating the investor, if the investor is even a right fit, right? So you have the right to ask questions like, okay, so what do you think about what wrong went with this other company that was making dinner by robots, and why couldn't they succeed, and what was the problem, right? So yes, you do learn a lot, and that could or could not change your perspective, obviously, right? Maybe you're learning something which you already knew, or maybe you're learning something new. So yes, I won't say the fundraising event, not like you today you have money, so now you learn something else, but the fundraising process itself, right? You're putting together a deck, you're structuring your thoughts, you're talking to advisors, you're talking to investors, you do learn, and your thinking evolves, especially in the early days. As you keep growing, it diminishes because you've done a lot of the research already now, right? So you are technically the expert of your market, but in the early days you are not.
Quick questions. I just squeeze in a question, Akhilesh, sorry. So Swapnil, the fundraising process, can be long, can be really overwhelming, right? And there are a lot of no's involved in the whole process. So how does a founder, not get dejected, take it positively,
Yeah.
and survive the whole process?
Yes, it's let's be real, founders, like it's not that easy, right? Always, right? In some cases it's easy, in some cases it's not, and you keep at it, right? You started a company for a reason, you have been working on this idea for a reason, you believe in something, right? You believe that what you're doing will change the world, right? So keep at it. Every single success story that you read of, right, from Airbnb, I remember the Airbnb story, by the way, because we were part of Y Combinator when the Airbnb founders came to share the story, and they had insane amount of rejections before they made it somewhere. It was real. I think I can even say they were one of the hardest fundraising stories of such a large company. They are now a massive $50 billion plus company. But if you look at the story, it was really, really hard, right? So what I would say is, like, don't think of the fundraising process as something that you have to do. If you use the mindset that, hey, I'm forced to do this and I'm forced to talk to investors, you will kind of go with that mindset. But if you kind of use like a partnership mindset, like, okay, I'm going to meet these people because I'm looking for a partner in my journey, right? And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, right? Think about your dating life. Like, you meet a lot of people and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like, do you stop? No, right? You don't. You keep finding more people to date, and you keep finding someone who you really love, and then get married, right? Same thing in the VC world, right? You are meeting all these people. Some will work out and some will not, um, but don't think of this as like you have to do it. Change it to like you're learning a lot and you're finding a partner, and then convert this into like a learning process, then like a fundraising event like, oh, I need a money and then I'm going to disappear. No, it's like a process, and this is a lifelong thing, by the way, not just seed round and pre-seed rounds. Like, you will continue talking to investors. They're a big part of company success. They're a big part of, like, how we as innovators are able to bring our technologies to market, right? So think of it in a very positive and a productive and um, an uplifting lens, a learning lens, I would say. Then, like, oh my God, I'm gonna talk to investor, I don't like it, and yeah, I have to talk. I don't want to do any of that. Don't. You're a CEO. You're an entrepreneur. That is a big part of your role. It's not just to write code and sit in your room with headphones and code. That's not your only role.
Also, I know we touched upon this a bit, but maybe we could go a bit more into detail around how you navigate the complexity of fundraising, specifically in terms of the different clauses and the terms, being a technical co-founder.
Yep. So usually pre-seed and seed term sheets are pretty clean, right? You know, the intent from the VC side, the intent from the founder side is like pretty clean. When you are a pre-seed company, no one is trying to inject clauses or weird terms to against that. Like, none of the VCs, none of the good VCs, and same on the founder side, no one is trying to do that. So that's my basic assumption. I always go with that intent. Like, these are our partners in this journey. No one is trying to play around with like nasty terms or anything of that sort, right? But sometimes it does happen, and sometimes, right, you as CEO, you as founder who got the term sheet is looking at this, and you're looking at this term like liquidation preference, and you're like, what does it even mean, and what is it? I have no idea, right? And is it good for my business? Is it bad for my business? Like, is it good for my common investors? Will it be good for my future investors? You don't know anything of that, right? And funny enough, like, you would not believe, this happens even with me right now, right? In our CDC term sheet, we got the term sheet, and I understood 30 to 40% of that. And rest I'm like, I have no idea, right? So what you end up doing is, there are a few things you should do when you're trying to negotiate terms. One, have a good lawyer. Make sure someone from legal is looking at that, right? And then what you always end up doing, what I always end up doing is, I always ask the lawyer, give me business situations when this will happen, right? So otherwise, what will happen is, let's say liquidation preference is a term, right? The lawyer will tell you, well, this means that when you liquidate, this investor will make I'm just making all this up, right? 2x of what they invested in. Then they need to make at least of 2x of what they invested in. And you were like, okay, but I still don't understand how this applies to our business, when this will happen, and is it good for the business or not? So you kind of ask your lawyer, like, help me with situations where this will happen, and let's debate in those situations what the VC is asking for is good for the business or not, and is it a good for common or not, and this is going to be good for the future investors or not, right? You kind of use 3 lenses for every term, but there's no expectation. I absolutely do not expect any of you to understand these terms until you are ready to go public or anything of that sort, right? Right now, your focus should be build something people care about, talk to users, build great products. Like, you don't want to become lawyers and go into understanding liquidation preference and this and that. Like, you don't want to get into that game, right? So use lawyers, use other founders. So lawyers is first, use other founders. So let's say you know friends who have raised seed, and in general, founder to founder, there's a very, very good transparency, right? Like, we would share very openly with each other, like P&Ls and term sheets and terms, very, very comfortably. Like, founders are very comfortable with each other, right? So use other founders, reach out to other founders and be like, hey, I got this term sheet from Pi Ventures, and I'm seeing this like liquidation preference term. Did you have it? Did you not have it? What did your lawyer say? What do you think about this? And you're kind of understanding what's the template, what's the baseline. Are you off, or this is the norm? Maybe it's the norm, and then you're not too far off, right? On where the world is. And third, what really helps in these situations is you have more term sheets, right? So that gives you negotiation power, right? When you have 3 term sheets, all of them want to invest in you. You can always go back and negotiate with the investors if there's a term that you don't like. And then finally, every term in the term sheet is a trade-off, right? So let's say it's negotiation, right? So Pi Ventures, there's a term for, I'm just making this up, right? I know Pi Ventures is great, and their term sheets are clean, but let's assume there's like a 2x liquidation preference term, right? And your lawyer says, you know what, Swapnil, it's bad for you. It could put the company at risk at this stage, this stage. Said, okay. And now you're sitting here and thinking, okay, so my lawyer says there's a risk. But if I go back to Pi, they will pull the term sheet out. They will not negotiate on this. So my job as a CEO now is to assess the risk. Do I want to take this risk, or do I want to take the risk of company shutting down? Because if I don't take this money, I have no other term sheets and I will have to shut down the company. So basically weighing the risk. And this is literally the job of CEO forever. You're always weighing trade-offs and you're always weighing risk, right? So sometimes you're like, I'm okay with 2x liquidation preference because I need this money ASAP. I'm not able to pay salaries and I really need to do these things, right? That's sort of what I would say have been my usual techniques on negotiating terms. Like, use a lawyer, use other co-founders and CEOs, assess the risk, and have more term sheets. If you do these 4 things, and you'll have a better understanding of what you're signing up for.
So another question, and this is on, let's say, the NLP side, with the existence of large language models out there. How are you able to stay ahead on the innovation curve? And more importantly, how are you able to convince investors of the differentiation?
Could you repeat that question in the context of NLP? So, sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. So because of the existence of large language models out there, right? How are you able to convince investors of your differentiation and also stay ahead on the innovation?
Yeah, so this is specific to Observe, or this is specific to the company asking for themselves?
This could be general to, let's say, all NLP startups out there, right? Who are looking to try and differentiate themselves with their innovation.
Yeah. So I can give our example. How do we differentiate our technology? Right? You could argue that there's Google and there's Amazon who is doing speech to text, and they also have like NLP platforms. We differentiate by building deep workflows into a specific business area, right? What Google does really well is like, here's my API, go do ASR, go figure it out, right? What we go and say to the buyer and a business who we sell to is, we're not selling you APIs, we're not selling you infrastructure, we're selling you a product and a workflow that naturally fits really, really well with what you do today, versus having to go and integrate Google's ASR and Google's NLP and figure it out, right? Because our buyers are not buying technology. As I said before, they're buying solutions to the problems, right? So they are not looking for platforms like Google and AWS or others to say, okay, I'm going to buy a platform and then I'll figure out a solution to this, right? They really want companies who use these technologies and have built workflows and integrations specific to what they are trying to solve. And that works really, really well. Because think of it this way, right? Every SaaS company, go back to the ERP era, right? Every SaaS company out there, which is not doing, let's say, like any AI and any ML, is basically like a front end and a back end, right? If you think of it this way. And they're using AWS, they're using compute, they're using compute, they're using storage. So now you could argue that, hey, why can't I, how do you compete with storage and compute companies? Because people can build on top of that, right? And the same analogy here, like ASR and speech, these are platforms. Like someone still have to figure out, how do I use this to solve my business problems, right? So even on AWS and Azure, there's simple SaaS applications built, which are very specific to what a buyer needs, and that fits deep into their workflow, right? So same in our case, like people, you're doing NLP, you're doing NLP for a use case, right? You're doing NLP for a workflow, for a buyer persona, for a user persona. Go deep into that and solve that problem. If you're obviously building an NLP platform, then you're competing with Google directly. But if you're not, then you're just using this technology as a component to solve a buyer problem and a user problem by building deep workflows, deep integrations. You're great. You're a product company, not a platform company. And that really differentiates you. Second thing that works really good in our favor is the data sets. By only focusing on contact center and contact center data sets, our accuracy for that kind of data set is far, far better than anyone else, naturally, right? Because Google is building all this on their data set, on all kinds of data set. This conversation that we are having here, the conversation that you would have with Alexa, the conversation you have with Google Home, every single conversation, they're modeling based on that. But guess what? Observe doesn't have to model on that. Observe models on contact center data. So we are far, far more accurate, right? So when you build vertical specific AI, when your AI is specifically focused on a specific area, you do far more accurate. I'll give you a simple example again in the context of the breakfast robot. You build a robot that makes breakfast. Is that going to be better at building breakfast, or the robot that can do any task and you have to train it to make breakfast? Which one would you buy as a bachelor? Do I care about buying a robot and then training on making breakfast, or I'll go and be like, oh, I found a robot that just makes breakfast. It's going to make vada pav and poha for me, right? So that's the same analogy in our world. Like people are not looking to buy platforms; they're looking to buy like products that already solve the problems.
Great. Rahul has a follow-up question to a previous question around pre-seed and seed funding. How much time would it take to close a seed round of, let's say, ballpark $500,000, assuming that the founder is speaking to investors for the first time?
Yeah, I would say like, so it depends on how much prep work you have done, right? Like before you talk to investors, I strongly encourage, talk to other founders, talk to other CEOs who have raised money, who have built decks, go do some research on how to build decks, do some pitch sessions with other founders, do some pitch sessions with like test investors, like do all of that. That's a lot of prep work, which will make your fundraising process easy. You don't want to go in there with a VC and you have no idea how to build a deck. You don't know what questions VCs are going to ask. So that's something I really encourage, right? Like make sure you get that part right before you even talk to an investor. And if you've done that work right, I expect like 4 to 6 weeks is like a good time frame for like a seed round of 500K.
Got it. And I think just to follow up on this, right, it's probably something. So Sansit has asked this question, and it probably fits in very well as a follow-up. So before you actually go ahead and talk to VCs for a seed fundraise, do you get validation from a certain number of customers, or get a couple of LOIs signed, or do you acquire some data? Or when does it make sense to start having these conversations?
Yes, of course. You're going to a VC and saying invest in my business. The basic question is why, and then you will say great AI, great all of that. Doesn't matter. Go back to the problem again. Okay, so what problem you're solving for whom, right? And what is the proof points that you have this problem even matters? So that's where I'm going back to the same framework. Either you have contracts, which okay you don't have because you don't have a product. You have trial contracts. Okay, someone's going to run POCs with you. Maybe you have, maybe you don't have. Then you have LOIs. Even if you don't have that, then you have design partners who have said this problem matters and will work with this company. Or you have like verbal sort of like feedback from these buyers for the problem you're solving. So in that order of preference, like you need to have some validation. Like how else are you going to convince someone that this matters? You go and you're going and telling the investor that invest in this breakfast maker, but you're not giving proof points of I've spoken to 100 such customers who will get value from that, right? So you need validation, and validation can come in these 5 forms that I just outlined.
So Vineet asks, right, you mentioned you started with North America market for sales, right? How did you pick that versus India or any other geography?
Yeah, it's a lot of ICP work, and where we thought our TAM is going to be. We always knew our market is going to be North America. That's where like the largest contact centers are. That's where the need of what we were solving was. So it was pretty clear for us that this is going to be a global company, and we wanted to make sure that we act and we work like a global company from day one. It was really important for us. The problem sometimes that people get stuck in is, let's say you start selling in India, you get one customer in India, then okay, you sell in India, then you'll be like, okay, I need to hire some customer success or implementation people in India. Okay, then that one customer, because you have, let's say, a Make My Trip, you start getting a Book My Show as a customer, and then you get one more. You're kind of getting into this situation where you're in this vicious cycle of more customers, more people, more customer, more people, marketing, case studies, everything in India, right? And then it becomes harder to come out of that loop, right? So what we were really conscious from day one was like, we're a global company, we have to have global customers from day one. So we were very conscious of the fact that we will only go and sell in North America in the beginning. First, build our brand, that is the global company, and then we'll go international. So, starting next year, we'll go into Europe, India, Asia, APAC, and all those places. But just to set up the right brand and right tone out there from day one, we really emphasize consciously that we want to go out and sell in this market.
Right. And I think a good follow-up to that would be Rahul's question around how big enough is a TAM or a SOM or a SAM, to get an investor's attention. Is that geography specific, or is it more of a general number?
Actually, I don't even know what is SOM and SAM. I know what is TAM. TAM, right? It's a honestly, it varies, right? Depending on the stage of the fund. So if you're raising a seed fund, right? If you can show a path that this will be like $100 million ARR company, that's like great, right? You feel like this, and that could happen in, let's say, like a $2 billion TAM, because that's like a 5% penetration. Sounds reasonable. You can get there, right? And in some cases, the TAM is actually very early and it's building, because there's going to be latent demand in the market. Uber is a great example. Uber used to say the TAM is a taxi market, but because of the latent demand, they actually took away the car market, they took away the public transport market. They just ended up creating a new TAM for themselves, right? This happens a lot in a customer's journey, in a startup's journey. So there's no hard and fast rule of how much TAM is going to be, but good ranges of TAM for, I'm talking about SaaS businesses, is like 2 to 10 billion is like a good TAM. Like if you can show that, there's enough demand in the market for $2 billion of revenue, and you can capture 5% of that, that's like a good $100 million ARR company right there for you.
Got it. And Shubham asks, what are the revenue ranges for a Series ABC fundraise for a SaaS company?
Yeah. So I'll share like ballpark ranges, but the reality, unfortunately, got really screwed up last year, right? When rounds were happening all over the place, some mostly very, very early, right? Series Cs were happening very early. But good ranges for A is a million in ARR, right? So anywhere from 750K to 1.5 million, right, is a good range of you talking about it. A for your B, anywhere from 5 to 10 is a good place. And then C, like 15 to 25 is a good place to start having a C conversation.
Got it. And just a quick interjection here. Folks in the chat, please feel free to ask your final questions related to fundraising in the chat now. We probably will take up another 2 or 3 of those before we close. In the meanwhile, Swapnil, there's another question on chat. When you're building a new category, right, how do you go about validating the GTM? Right, it can be required everywhere, but how do we begin to understand where our users are going to pay for it first?
Yeah, it's a lot of iteration, right? You build hypotheses. So you say, let's say again, robotics breakfast maker. What you would do is you would define different segments of who could, right? Because you don't know right now. So who could potentially use the product. So you would say, 20 to 25-year-old unmarried men and women in metro cities, right? This is sort of like one segment. Another is just married people who don't want to cook, 25 to 30. I'm making all these up, right? But I'm giving you a segmentation exercise, 25 to 30, living in metro cities. Then your third segment could be college going kids, right? Well, sorry, college going people, not kids. So people are going to college, right? Maybe they need something. And you build your segments and you go and validate against each segment. So same thing, when you're doing category, it gets even harder because there's no inbound demand. No one is going online and searching, oh, I need a robot for my breakfast maker, right? You have to, it's a very outbound driven process. When you are trying to educate the market, you're trying to validate your segments. So when you're trying to do new category, you have to talk to a lot more people to find the right segment where this might work, and then pick that segment as your first segment where the need is far more critical than other segments, and start with that segment. So go by segmenting the entire market into different categories, and then figure out what's the right segment for the new category that you're creating. It's an iteration. There's no magic bullet. You have to talk to people, validate, do customer development exercises. There's a lot of research online on how to do customer development. Steve Blank has done like really good blogs and websites and books. There's a process of how you do customer development. You don't lead with your hypothesis. How you get your answers, right? So do that process with a wide segment of markets, and then you will get to your segment that is the most critical need.
Got it. So a follow up on the previous revenue range question, right? What are the typical revenue growth rates from seed to Series A, Series A to B, and then Series B to C that investors like to see?
Yeah, there's a very standard understanding there, right? So when you are starting seed, when you're starting seed, right, you start with seed. There's no expectation, right? But once you get to Series A, let's say you're a million ARR, there's an expectation of 3x growth from there. So there's a formula called T2D3. So you triple twice and then you double thrice. So once you get to a million, the expectation is from there in 12 months, you get to 3, 1 to 3, and then 3 to 9, and then 9 to 18, 18 to 36, 36 to 72. That's the usual good SaaS path that everyone likes seeing.
Got it. So, before passing this on to Rupan, just a question or rather something from me, right? Is there anything that you would like to kind of say to founders today who are looking to raise funds in the supposed environment of, funding winter?
Yeah. I mean, I think as I said before, I don't believe that there's going to be massive impact in the seed and pre-seed rounds. Those are early in the market. So I don't expect that there'll be a lot of impact on those rounds. Second, as I said before, like if you have a good business, you have a good idea, good team, rounds will happen. So do not think of like in a macro way where, okay, because the public market is going down, no funding is going to happen, so let's all shut down our business and let's do something else, right? Please do not do that. You all are doing great. You all have great businesses. You all are really smart. You have great ideas. Go out and talk to investors and get feedback. And good companies will raise money. Absolutely will raise money, right? And in fact, like some of the best companies, right? If you look at 2008 crisis, came out of that crisis. Companies like Dropbox, companies like Airbnb, all were started in that time period, right? So I do expect that. You guys will be able to raise round. You guys will be, especially if you have a great business. I don't expect too much. Yes, your valuation might be slightly lower, but at this stage, I would not focus on all of those things. I would not optimize for valuation. I would not optimize for any of that. This is not the right time. The only thing that matters at this time is get a great partner who is committed to your vision, and go back and talk to your customers and build products.
Great. Thanks, Akhilesh, for moderating the questions. I think we've tried to address most of the questions, but really sorry if we've missed some of them. It's just that we are now running out of time. And so I think we'll have to wrap this up. So, Swapnil, thanks so much for taking our time. I think this has been a really engaging and insightful discussion. And thanks for being so candid about some of the answers as well. And we really, really appreciate you taking our time to speak with us today.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Great to meet all of you, amazing entrepreneurs. If there's anything I can do, I can help with, like, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, and we'll certainly try to talk to you and help you in whatever you're trying to do.
Nice, appreciate that, Swapnil. And also would like to thank the audience for joining us. Please keep an eye out for future sessions on the similar lines, and would really be glad to have you guys attend those as well. So thanks so much, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.